Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the 13th talk in the Only One Theme talk series, which we are focusing around innovation management. Our team at techx.in at Venture Center is hosting this series. And today's topic is on only finding licensees. Our speaker for today is Dr. Vandana Sarda. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Vandana. Vandana is currently co-founder at River Spirits, Mumbai, which is a platform for women to develop their health, wellness, talents, and skills. Vandana has been a professional coach in healthcare and medtech consultant, an experienced startup mentor, and business development professional in the life sciences, healthcare, and pharma biotech industry. She has 20 plus years of extensive commercial experience in developing and scaling health tech and medtech businesses in life sciences, healthcare, pharma, biotech domains, strategic experience in building partnerships with multiple stakeholders like government, industry, startups, building scalable business models, IP strategy, and valuation and technology transfer, and commercialization in life sciences and biotech sector. Vandana has driven strategic innovations for various premier pan-India organizations such as CSIR, IITs, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, BARC, Bombay Textile Research Association through technology evaluation, technology commercialization, licensing, collaborations, IP strategy, and valuation. As part of the management team, she had at a life sciences startup, she has developed the market for specialty formulation products, overseeing manufacturing, product development, and regulatory approvals. She has also mentored several medtech startups at IIT Bombay, Swissnex, CCamp, IIKP, BITS Goa, and many BIRAC programs also. With this brief introduction, I welcome Dr. Sarda to the session, and over to you, Dr. Sarda.
Thank you so much. So let me begin. Hi, Dr. Premnath, I saw your message and I'm equally glad to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Let me start sharing my presentation. Can everybody see it?
Yeah, we can see your screen. Maybe just full screen, yeah.
So, hello everyone. Can't see you, but I'm hoping all of you are there from what I was told, the background from various incubators across India. And as I said, very glad to be here. I was part of Venture Center when we were working for CSIR Tech. And I'm also very looking forward to this theme that you guys have, only one theme and a innovation management awareness program that you're running. So all in all, very, very glad to be here. And looking at the interest, I think it's good to see that startups are looking at how to monetize IP, because of course, finding licenses is part of that process. And I think as I was introduced, I was just thinking about this. I'm always felt that I'm in a unique position as far as it comes to monetization of IP, because I can look at it from a technical person's point of view as well, and understand why a startup or an innovator would like to keep perfecting their technology till they feel that it is ready for commercialization, but also from the point of view of somebody who has done commercialization, that it is always good to start early on, looking for options to monetize your IP. So it's really, I think I got more kick out of landing a deal of commercialization than actually developing it. So no offense to anybody here who comes from the background of doing innovation. And today, as I reside in Mumbai and I'm part of a platform, I'm more working on the ground B2C with these women on their wellness and total transformation. But it's always a pleasure to come back and talk on the experiences I've had in commercialization of IP. So I think, let me go to the next slide. So today's session will mainly be from the point of view of technology licensing and commercialization business that, as I mentioned, I was a part of. And I was looking at life sciences domain as well as West India. This is CSIR Tech. It's unfortunately no more functioning because of various reasons. But I think the learning the entire team got and the kind of work we did for the CSIR labs and other labs, according to me, was before its time and phenomenal. So having said that, that is a reference point from which I'm going to be sharing some of my experiences. I think that one of the reasons that I got the job at CSI Tech was this marketing and business development background that I have, because I fully believe that technology licensing or finding licenses, which is today's topic, is no different from marketing. And successful technology licensing is basically a combination of steps, which include pre-marketing, marketing, and then, of course, the final licensing. But I think marketing is where I would equate it to finding licenses. So as you see in the slide, today's flow, I'm going to spend a major chunk of my time talking about those principles. I will share some of the work that we did in CSIR Tech. So there'll be some demos about that. Unfortunately, that cannot be part of the presentation, but I can show you live. And then if time permits, I have a very basic overview of what is the role of a licensor and licensee when we talk about finding licensees. But I understand there is also probably a talk on licensing which follows this. So I'm sure the speaker will go in much deep depth. Going to the next slide. So just an overview of where my experience comes from. So CSI Tech was this dedicated group of people, and we had a P&L responsibility out of making it a technology transfer business. So I think that is very important to remember when you are run like a private limited company. The team is the best part of it. So we had a very good team, and this is a key thing that I'm going to be repeating throughout the presentation. It was a multidisciplinary team, which we were from different industries, myself from Life Sciences. We were technology generalists in the sense, not too much depth as an innovator, but enough to understand the technology and do its feasibility. I myself was from the business background, but we were also had part of our team lawyers, patent attorneys, financial analysts. So all this I'm telling you to just to give a feel of when you're thinking about licensing or finding licenses, it is a multidisciplinary task. So you need that kind of support. And the mandate that we had in CSI Tech was twofold actually, because we were not the ones who were the technology owners. So we also had to have a technology portfolio, which we scouted from different R&D labs, mainly CSI labs all over India. But the major chunk of our mandate was licensing out these technologies to industry and organization. So I think with this background, please keep this in mind as I go through the presentation, right? So what were we doing at CSIR Tech mainly was a couple of 2-3 things. So we were looking at the technologies, the candidate technologies, I said, which I typically call it a pre-marketing stage. So if you are the innovator, maybe you have 2 or 3 technologies, or maybe you have one core technology, or you have a technology platform. In our case, it was a bouquet of technologies. But in any case, the first step in that would be to identify your technology, which you are thinking of monetizing, right? And then the second main thing to do is its protection, which is, I mean here like a IP protection, doing patenting. And I think the last seminar was about that. Because this is very important. Every time you are going to look for licensees, there is a lot of information that will be asked. So it is good to have that kind of like a prior art or provisional patents in place before you even think about it. And this itself can take you 3 to 6 months. So licensing as a decision has to consider this pre-marketing stage should be there in your mind before you think about it. Right. So in our case, we already had patented technologies. We only took those up for licensing. Now, this is the major chunk of today's presentation, I said, is going to be on the marketing stage, which I call the finding licensees. Only finding licensees, the topic of today. So in this, what we set out to do was mainly look at how we could prepare a business case for ease of these technologies. And I will go in much detail about the steps, the stage of the technology, what is its readiness, all that definitely plays a part in how you pitch it, right? But of course, a big part is moving from the mindset of innovation or IP generation to the mindset of business. So that kind of analysis is very important at two levels. One, it will help you make a case for your technology. And the other thing is, of course, it will help you identify those candidate industries and companies. Then, as happens in any other marketing exercise, you need to know your competitor technologies, your competing companies, you have to prepare the marketing materials, you should be able to talk to your target audience. And then, of course, there's a whole sales funnel, what I call, and I'm going to go through all of this, which is follow-up. Because I think finding licensees and this marketing takes up quite a bit of time and creativity. Just a minute. So just going back, I think a right time to start your marketing effort or your finding licensing effort is when you are in the pre-marketing stage, right? Because that's when you can even start thinking about what kind of market you're targeting, what is your target market, what are your target companies, so that as you are progressing with your product development, this whole exercise is also progressing in parallel. So this is something we missed at CSI Tech because we already got technologies which were patented and ready to go to market, whichever stage they were at. So according to the CSI lab head or the innovator, that was a particular technology that they wanted us to take ahead. But if you have the scope where you're thinking much ahead about monetizing it through licensing, then a right time to start thinking about that is when you are developing your technology itself. So that later on, I'll explain how that helps you in actually creating a pull factor for your license, right? Going to the next. So the last stage is, of course, the actual licensing where you are negotiating and you are sort of drafting an agreement. And this itself is a big activity. So here I'm just going to maybe look at some of the basic steps, and I hope the team will have somebody talk about licensing. Two or three key things in licensing is, of course, to establish a position which is a win-win for both the people. Because until and unless that happens, it's very difficult to close the deals. And we did close many deals in CSI Tech. In different ways. I won't say that all of them are out licensing deals outright way, but there was a lot of tech commercialization that we did. There has to be a win-win and there has to be satisfactory protection for both the licensee. So the licensee and the licensor both have to benefit. And there are two key things here, right? The business issue and of course the legal issue. So the best thing is to have an initial contract with all the business terms and then let the legal side take care of it so that the business interests are protected. So let me jump right ahead into, without wasting any time, into the finding licenses, which I call the marketing stage. So here, it is, as I said, the key thing again is the licensing team. So if you are an innovator and you have a technology which you are thinking of out licensing, there has to be a person or a team in your organization or your startup that has to be totally a licensing or / marketing team. My suggestion from my experience is let the CEO or the founder not double up for this particular job or this particular profile because it's quite tedious. It is a time-consuming process. And you will need to coordinate with many different kinds of functions. So like I mentioned here, the team or the person has to be at least proficient technically, financially, legally, and also have some knowledge of patent. Now, if the founder himself starts doing this, then it is very difficult to be able to give that time to this activity. So you have to be very, very sure about it and do dedicate a resource to this. There are other very much soft skills because this marketing or licensing is about making somebody else convinced about your idea, about what you have innovated, what was the logic behind that, what do you think it will go ahead. So it has to be a personality which can interact efficiently with R&D people at one end and also the top management. And secondly, when we are done with finding licenses, it's a lot of negotiation. So I'm not saying that one person needs to have all of this, but the profile of the person has to be where he can take he or she can take the innovation and take it all the way to negotiation and be able to pitch and sell and structure at least the initial deals before the lawyers and the patent attorneys can take over. The other key thing, if you are wanting to get into licensing, is to keep a tap on the market. Because the opportunities, as we also saw, we were a team of 10 to 12 people strong, each having some domain. Like I had life sciences, there were people for other domains. The licensing opportunity or the licensing window is very short-lived. And therefore, it is very essential to keep a tap on the market, your target market, where you're looking as to any scenario has changed. Is there an opportunity for a deal? So I think that's why I have kept the part about the team right, center, and forward, because as I was mentoring startups, a lot of startups founders were very technology savvy. They were very good at what they were doing, but this was like the business part was a missing thing. And then the licensing itself looks like a black box to most people. They feel that it is something which is out of their reach. Today, basically, in very basic terms, I think today's webinar is very basic. What I'm trying to draw is a parallel between finding licenses and marketing. Although there are important differences, and I'll next 2-3 slides actually talk about that, right? So I hope that this point is well taken. So a few pointers in terms of the mindset. How should you approach licensing or finding licenses? Is like consider your IP, whatever you have, whether it is still a concept or you are in a prototype stage. I think ideally this is a prototype stage is where you have to start thinking about licensing, and not when you are at TRL 4-5. If you ask me, if as per my experience working with technologies, working with these labs, to consider all of that as a product which deserves a appropriate marketing plan. So all the principles of marketing would apply here in terms of how you prepare your team to do. You have to be very active in the industry. You have to develop partnerships. So as I said, you need that kind of an outgoing personality who loves to go and talk about the IP to people. You have to be updated on your target audience and your potential licensees, even if you may not be licensing for 6 months or a year down the line. And the main thing about this is, as I said again and again, keep approaching the potential licensee. They are very happy to talk because these people or these companies or these individuals with those particular portfolios in those companies are always on the lookout for new technologies. So they're very happy to talk. So it's always good, of course, within the bounds of your non-disclosure and your patent prior art, to be able to talk to these people and to take those inputs so that your product or your technology can develop with those inputs. So I think the UX, the product, the form factor, how you go about designing all this has to be from market inputs. And you're not going to get a market input sitting in your office or your lab and looking at the Google. It has to be to talk to the potential licensees. So I remember there was a Medtech company which we were mentoring. I was mentoring. This is out after CSI Tech, and they had taken almost 5 to 7 years to develop the product. No doubt, the product was very good. It had a lot of backing of very high level people from the industry. I mean, not business, but the R&D side. But by the time they decided they were selling the product, not licensing the technology, most of the form factor and the UX had already become obsolete. So to avoid that kind of a setback, it's always good to start early on. Now that is a nuance, like what is starting very early and what is starting very late. That is where the experience of your advisors may be coming into play, but good to think early on, comparatively. From what I have seen, most startups think about, right? So there is a subtle difference, as I said, right? Even though it's marketing principles are involved, marketing a full-fledged technology product and marketing a technology or licensing it out or finding the licensees, there is a difference. Okay, so now next few slides, let's look at some of the parallels and some of the differences. Okay, and the thing is, there is no manual for licensing. That is something I want to tell you. The principles come from marketing, and that's what I'm discussing today. That is what I used, and most of the team at CSI Tech used. to get and we did a lot of work on making SOPs about licensing. How could we qualify them? So all this, nothing was available. But the background was from marketing, business, and business development. And that's the reason, that is the whole angle I've taken here today. So significant parallels, right? Because the objective is the same. Why are you innovating? You are innovating because there is a customer need or there is some problem you have identified. That is always your starting point, and it always needs to be the starting point. But what I have seen is, even though that is the starting point, as the founders get involved in developing the product, somewhere that need and that problem takes a backseat, right? And then it is more about perfecting the product, maybe troubleshooting some of the technical parts of it. So that's the reason to have that dedicated team, right? And so that objective always is the same, whether you are trying to license out or you're trying to sell a technology product. Also, the fundamental process also remains the same. You are going from looking at the need and then finding a fair solution which is good, and then of course selling it or licensing it out at a reasonable price with a great support system from behind, because your job is not done after you license out. Your technology still needs to take off, right? So that is again something I'll be discussing at the end. And of course, having said these parallels, the consumer of an end product and of a technology may well be different. Because here it could be something B2B, in terms of the end products, it could be B2C as well. And so the techniques to kind of identify, like the market research part of it, may be different. Also, you have to remember that, data on technologies in terms of what is the market need, how big is the market, who are the target, is not that easily available, because it might be a very novel technology. So I remember there was a drug from CDRI, which is one of the CSI labs. It was a novel drug and they wanted to figure out the licensing. And the first thing what we told them was that we need to do some kind of a market landscaping for the product, because it's so new. We don't know like who would be taking it up. And when we started doing that, we realized that there were not many data points available. So we had to really look at very close products and try to project few of the things, but still be close enough to make sense of the whole data. So these are some of the parallels, and there are also many important differences. So needless to say, in licensing, the product is that whole package that you bring with the team, your technology, what you have to offer, how willing are you to look at it. And of course, there are things like, do you want to license out the core technology or the non-core part, or only a part of the technology? How does the licensee see that? So all these things matter. As I said already, it requires a great deal of creativity, imagination, and projection, because the data is not very readily available to figure out the market need. But it's not like it's not doable. So even if it's a novel product, it is going to be in some category. So it's not like it's impossible. And much of your input is not going into the promotional material per se, but it is more on how you structure the whole licensing deal, or how you structure the whole finding licensees part, because that is a very critical part. Unless you have a potential licensee in front of you, you're not going to be able to create any kind of a deal or structure, right? So and many of the research techniques have to be modified. So again, here that's where you need either a person who can advise you from their experience, or somebody who is capable of doing this. As I already said, a market may not even exist sometimes. And the data might not be available. So at best, what you can do is have a tentative feasibility plan, but that is still better than not having looked at it at all. Because even if you defer this exercise, ultimately, you will still be in a place where you need to understand the market, the customer, the licensee. So when I'm talking about market, customer, licensee, for today's talk, all three are the same. Even if I'm using them interchangeably. Another difference is, of course, a brand. You are not yet built a brand. And the value and pricing of a technology product versus a technology is very different. Usually, as I said, no historical data is available to do such a thing, right? So these are some of the important differences. Other thing is, in licensing, the licensees, the target audience is very different. It is not It is not a sales team of a company. It is a R&D people. It is the lawyers, the patent attorneys. It could be, of course, some business people. So your pitch has to be accordingly to address this group. And a major part of our work in CSI Tech was to decide this pitch that we were going to make. What were we going to say? And of course, the technology didn't belong to us, so we needed a lot of help from the labs themselves. We used a lot of publications of the inventors. We tried to do a demo whenever possible. I think one of the things you saw on the earlier side is show, don't tell. So showing is always better. I'm sure like many of you probably realize this, but just again, based on my experiences at CSI Tech. And of course, your licensee, the pitch has to be customized. As I will talk in the next 2-3 points, a lot of time you will find a very few potential licensees or companies who are even looking at this kind of a novel product. So a lot of time the marketing is not something like a mass marketing we usually do, but more of a one-to-one discussion, right? And now it's called one-to-one marketing. So that needs are different. It has to be customized. You have to take into account the marketing segmentation and positioning. And a lot of times what we felt was we had to also think from the point of view of the licensee as to what kind of issues that person could face in the market with this kind of a technology product and address that for them. Because of course, you as somebody who has made this technology or you are the innovator, you are in a much better position to be able to explain that. So what I'm trying to make the point is that your whole pitch has to be customized from person to person. It cannot be just one pitch which you are making to everybody, right? Because these are novel technologies. And then the time frame of acquiring a customer in a normal product versus a licensing deal is it's much longer in the latter part. And I have a slide on what are the factors in licensing, and I will also show a demo how much time it used to take us to go from like a starting point where we take the technology to try and do a deal, right? So yeah, this is the demo. So here it's CSI Tech, sorry, CTPL is the same as CSI Tech Private Limited. We had put in a place a technology transfer process, which almost looked like the 7 steps of the sales funnel, which I have on the screen. And our process started from L0 all the way to L5. So L0 was basically when we prospect. We take the technology and we are trying to find who are the people who are interested. Then there is a phase of qualification. Qualifying the lead. In our case, we had a SOP for qualifying the technology and the lab and the team there, as well as qualifying the potential licensee. And that document, I cannot really share because there were such explicit things like we also looked at the motivations and drivers of the innovation or the innovator, and those kind of questions we were encouraged, the team was encouraged to ask to qualify. And a lot of times, even if the technology was very novel, it was patented, if we found that the team did not have that kind of a mindset for commercialization, there would be less number of points given. So there was a point system for every technology we picked up and put in our portfolio to take forward for commercialization. So sometimes that really counted. So that mindset of finding a licensee has to be very important, because if you look at the point number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, objection handling, which is the most critical thing in a sales. Once the person has liked your product and you're waiting for the conversion to happen. This is, I'm talking about product sales, not even technology at this technology licensing. There is a lot of back and forth if you are doing that objection handling. And that is where your mindset will kick in. If you don't have that kind of a mindset, this will wear you out, the objections, right? So let me just stop sharing this screen, and I want to show you a few demo from the CSI Tech. This is a confidential data, so I'm going to just share it on the live here and not be able to share it for later on. Okay? So Dr. Premnath is here, and hoping that this won't be taken against me that I'm sharing this. How do I go to? Okay, so this is the sales progress that I was talking about. And as you can see, this is data, actual data from 2015, how we did it. So L0 was where we would contact people about the technology, prospecting, and let's say those numbers were around 1,000. And then we would qualify the lab and the technology. This was a process called BANT, as I said before. I don't remember its full form, but it was something related to what was the business, what was the attitude, something like that. We had given a synonym, but there were like 8 or 10 criteria. After that qualification, let us say that came to around 700. And then we would start sending out term sheets, which is like a proper sort of approval from the labs to go ahead with the technology. Numbers would drastically fall, which you called L2. And then, of course, we would prepare a technical and a commercial proposal along with the lab. So everywhere we did the pitching for licensing, lab and CTPL was one entity because we were working on behalf of the lab. And then so L3 was a stage where we would be sending out, as I said, a pitch. Either it would be a written document, email, or a presentation where we would pitch it. And then if we reached L4 and L5, that was considered like a very big deal because you can see the numbers falling drastically. So this is almost like a sales funnel, what I showed you earlier. And then, so this was for the entire year. And we landed around 60 deals across all domains. And these were not just licensing deals, but all kinds of commercializations. We also did some retainer work. But the process always remained the same, going from a technology to actually a licensing or a commercialization part. And the next slide is just to show you that the process worked. And in the 1 year, these were the number of deals we did. We had new client, new businesses, or new business from existing client, or existing business from existing client rolling over, because if it was more than a year or it was a retailer. Let me stop sharing this. Go back to my earlier presentation. So I'll be doing this back and forth a little bit. And I want to show you real examples of what we did at CSI. And please excuse my voice, I have a little bit of a sore throat. Okay, I already did this demo. So making a match is basically where the market research comes in. So the process that I showed you was where we looked at around like a funnel of around 400, 450 per domain. So Life Sciences, I'll again share a document how we started out in July, and let's say for the next 9 months, what was our plan to look at this making a match or finding a licensee basically. So idea is you should look at companies that service your target customers. So for example, if it is a pharma drug, let's say for respiratory problems, then potentially would look for licensees who are in that domain. Now there is a little bit of a nuance. You don't want a company which is already having that product in that category. So you should be able to, so that's why I've written you have to go for a company who is probably at number 2 or number 3. Now, these are all practical tips. It is not something which is there in a manual, but how we used to do it. So that they'll be hungry for growth. If you go to the number 1, he or she, that company is already maybe doing their own R&D and they are not potential licensee at that point, right? Also, it is good to have a target company which has existing products which kind of align with your innovation so that maybe both can be packaged together for a value addition. So these are some tips on how to look for those target companies or target sectors or target teams who can be a potential licensee. Then, of course, going to the right, what kind of tools can you use? Again, this is not something strictly from a manual. This is things you have to be active in the industry. Of course, your starting point can be a Google search, but then you have to show up where your target customers show up, which is usually trade fairs, exhibitions, scientific conferences, physical marketplace, if it is that kind of a product, And you have to tap the networks of everyone around you, which means the inventors, innovators, your advisory, your board of directors, your founders, your incubator staff. Like at Venture Center, I'm sure there is a database and there's also a team who does this. So you really, while you can get help from the technology transfer team, as a founder, as a licensing team member, it is also your job to be having that first-hand information about where all is it that your product can be, your technology can become a product going through potential licensing. And then, of course, once you have done this combination of things, you need to have some shortlist. So like, I'll show you how we went from maybe like 300, 400 names to maybe 10, 15, like every month, every quarter we used to target, right? Now this can be based, your shortlisting can be based on annual revenues, they can be based on the market size of that company in terms of your product, like so TAM stands for the target available market. These are all marketing terms. I do have a slide at the end which explains this. So when the presentation is shared with all of you, you can go through that. SAM is something which is serviceable market. So target market might be whole of India, but serviceable might just be Maharashtra or Mumbai. And then SOM is basically in the market in which you can operate or that licensee can operate. So you definitely want to go for a company which has a bigger TAM, SAM and SOM, right? So that your chances or their deep pockets for going for innovation the chances are higher. And then, of course, you shortlist based on the business information which you get from the website of the company in terms of what is it that they are doing in that field, the press releases that they make, anything around product strategy. So all this basically is what you use as your tools to kind of zero in on potential licensing. Yeah, I think I have already spoken about it. You can also take help from consultants and agents if they are particularly well positioned for that market or that particular technology, but always good, as I said, to have your first-hand knowledge about this. One good thing is to identify recurring names of companies who are doing repeat advertising or they are investing resources in technologies. That is also an indicator that they might be good potential license. Demo. So this is our list of L0s and lead gen that we did at CSI Tech. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show. So this is basically showing our plan, how we used to make it. Like you can see, it's almost for 9 months, where we are starting out. We have a plan to start out with 450 L0s. So L0s are just prospects. We have no idea if they're interested in the technology. And here you can see the focus areas. These are the sectors that we went for. And of course, these are acronyms of my team members. So from 450 L0s, we went to L2s. So if you remember, L2s was where you qualify them and where you already have done the research, company research. So after 450 L0s, going up to 90 L2s, and then hoping to close that entire after the 90 L2s, like L3, L4, L5 in the next 3 to 6 months. So this is the way we would plan out the licensing or the tech transfer process. And then I'll also show you in terms of how, what I meant, looking up the company research, the market research. So the company, its website, of course, the team used to work on this information about that, which we would keep updating. There is a document in which we have contact persons, what we did, who was the person, when did we contact them. So the point I'm trying to make is this this was a totally a licensing business that we were running, but it was very close to doing a marketing or business development, because that is the kind of rigor you require, even if you are looking out for licensing, right? Yeah. So then once you've shortlisted, right, then comes, of course, the part about contacting. And this is again a very critical thing, because it's one thing to know the company and you have like sort of targeted that and you know, okay, this company has aligned products which they can take up. But who do you go to in that particular? So to find that person who you can talk to. So a lot of times we feel that it needs to be somebody from a licensing. If it's a big company, they do have a licensing department. But it is always good to look at the marketing director, because ultimately after licensing, after the in license, they are going to convert it into a product and sell it out. So early on, good to have inputs from the marketing director and the whole business development and sales team, so that the licensing team recommendation, of course, works, but then you have got major of the idea about what kind of technology or product or innovation would work in the company. So again, from experience, this is like a practical tip, that go for the people who are market oriented. And then needless to say, these are some of the areas. LinkedIn is very nowadays lucrative. You can find anybody on LinkedIn. If none of these work, just call the company and get the name of the person, but try to go for a person and their email ID and their number, because that way it's easier for you to be able to sort of talk to the right person. So even if you're not able to land at the right person, if you're able to get a person talking in the company, then through referral you can reach. And these are all things we have done actually, right? Okay, I think we can, in the interest of time, skip this. This is again another list of just companies. I was just going to show how it runs, like how do we do the market. So now you have the promising targets identified, then what? So you are extremely fortunate if you are the right individual on the initial contact itself. If not, it is going to be numerous calls and a series of referrals to get to the right person. And once you get to the right person, of course, explain the technology, your vision, your pitch that you have customized as to how this will integrate into their company's product line, what are the potential benefits. So all of this, so it's almost like you are showing the decision maker of that company a vision of how their product and how their market and their target customers are going to be benefited. So that is the reason to, again, as I said, have that mindset of marketing and business development, because so that you can create that vision, right? Then, of course, successful licensing, which hopefully will be our next session, is almost like a merger and acquisition. So you need that kind of involvement from your team to help create that licensing contract, and also have that BD experience. Now, I know many of you might be thinking we are a startup and we don't have that kind of a experience. So that is fine. I'm sure, like being part of the incubator, this all expertise can come to you. But then you have to be in that commanding role to how do you want to use that resource? Resource can come from anywhere, but how do you frame that whole thing? That work you need to do as a startup. There is no getting away from that to get a potential license, right? And then comes the waiting period. Of course, you have done all of this. Now, when the licensing pitch goes to the company, they will take their own time to do a business assessment and their business due diligence. And that is that last part of objection handling, where things will go back and forth, and where you have to be ready to explain and re-explain many of the things. You have to be quite empathetic to be in the shoes of the licensee and be able to look at it from their point of view. So I call this getting away from my baby is beautiful syndrome. So you have to get away from that thing that it is my technology, this is how it works, and almost always think about from the point of view of what is that person coming to me with? Why is that person thinking about it in this way? And is there something I can do about it? So that openness to this whole thing is what is going to help you crack the deal, no matter how good your technology is. And this is something seen again and again while mentoring startup, and the startup founders who are able to take this one small tip are the most successful in selling their products or licensing it out or commercializing it, because it's very important to do that, right? I already talked about this. Work out a pull model, because push model is inherently inefficient. Of course, you can work with that also. We work with that at CSI Tech, but definitely pull has its makes things more, I would say, smoother, and of course, getting a success rate is higher. So again, what do we mean by pull model? Thinking about the need and focusing on making your technology very appealing to them in that way. Of course, promote the technology, even if you are only going to license it out and it is a licensee's job to do it. From your side, you can nowadays use the net and social media to really make a compelling business proposition. And this one more thing that I want to say is that although I said reach the marketing director, in any setting, there is a team, and a CEO or a top person is not going to take a standalone decision. He is never going to not take his team's recommendation. And there is always a gatekeeper who is the person who is the least convinced or has this not invented here syndrome that they talk about. Because if it's a company which has the wherewithal and the deep pockets to license in a technology, they also have that wherewithal to do their own R&D. So there will always be a gatekeeper, a person who will always have these objections about licensing in. So your job as somebody who's trying to find a licensee is to take care of that gatekeeper, have the team on which the CEO or the decision maker or the marketing director depends, which could be R&D, which could be medical director, which could be their admin team, their procurement team, all on your side. So when I mean on your side is that you have made a pitch to them, customized it for how you are making their job easier, so that they become your internal champion. And then when the CEO asks for a recommendation, at least from their side, it is a positive recommendation. So that is very important, that you go with that attitude and mindset, that it is not just the last decision maker which is important, but everyone leading to that person. Again, this is based on experience and from the ED background. I just wanted to share one example of a tech transfer that we did, and how a lot of times landing a potential licensee involves so many other things. So this was a lab which had developed a patented and unique milk adulteration detection system. And the unique point of this was that that adulteration could be detected at the source itself, which was the milk collection centers. And of course, we did the exercises and the market exercise, and we identified the clients. When we contacted, one of the interested parties was this Gujarat-based RO filtration device manufacturer, and he had no portfolio for this kind of an innovation, but he was looking to diversify into a new technology as a separate entity. And he really liked this particular technology. Because it would make a lot of social impact, and so that is what they were looking for. So as a company, it was not like that was our job. We helped the company owner set up a separate entity for this particular technology, because his current setup was not legally and business wise okay to be able to license in this particular product. Then we handholded them for all the documentation and procedures involved with starting up, what the IP protection looks like. So the lab, of course, we did that, but also with the company owner. And finally, the tech transfer happened. So this is one example of that. I think we are already at 4:50. Should I stop now? Because I think I'm done with one last slide is time taken for finding licenses. So I get asked this question a lot by founders. That or used to get asked by the CSR labs and other labs we used to work with, what is the time that you're going to take to find a licensee for us? So it's not a question that can be easily answered, because it always depends on factors like what is the stage of your technology. Early, it's difficult to find licenses compared to a late. I'm sure this is very self-evident. The commercial attractiveness of the technology, like would it require more investments from the licensee to take it to market, or is it ready to go to market? Then, of course, the size of the market for the technology, which I already talked about, high TAM is always better, SAM and so on. So all these factors make sort of play into what time are you taking for finding a licensee. But just to ballpark, and what we have seen, anywhere between 6 to 9 months is a good period. So that's almost like your entire 1 year is going into it, and that's the reason to start thinking about it early on. Right? I think I'll stop now. This last section is more about licensing. What is a licensor? Who's a licensee? What are the different kinds of deals you can make? Like you can have a core technology, a non-core technology, or only a part of it. What is the why does one want to license out? There is something called cross-licensing where you can even work with competitors. So this is an example of that particular licensing strategy. You can have a strategic partnership. In this case, there was a large pharma company which took up this startup's technology so that they could become a strategic partner for manufacturing as well as distributing through their network, right? What are some of the gains to the licensors? Because of course, if you are licensing out, you get revenue from whatever stage your technology is in the form of royalties. You're able to enter new markets because a licensee, hopefully, depending on who you have licensed it out, can take it to different countries. Definitely, you have a competitive advantage because now your product will move into the market with greater ease. Your manufacturing costs are something that you don't need to worry about if you want to just stay into the innovation part. And then, of course, more markets you can enter through your licensing. So that is a gain to the licenses. Of course, there are also disadvantages, and I have included them in the presentation as additional slides. There's also reference material from where all this is not my original words. I have used some references to prepare the presentation. I have put that as well. You can go through that. What are the gains to the licensee? Because as I said in the beginning itself, right, it has to be a win-win for both. Otherwise, licensing is tough to happen. So for the licensee, of course, it is that they don't have to invest in their own R&D for that particular technology. Doesn't mean that they would not do any R&D. But let's say if this gives them an edge in the market to take to market faster, or the patenting cost is lessened because of this having a ready technology, overall it's low investment, then of course it is a gain to them and they would be very interested in licensing something, right? Access to established technologies, if that is where your category is, like it is a late stage technology. And for getting an exclusive license, and there are, mostly we are from the innovator side, we do not go for exclusive licensing, want to keep the options open for multiple licensing opportunities. But from a licensee's point of view, and if he's bringing that much advantage to the table and we go for exclusive license, then the licensee stands to gain a lot, because that gives the licensee a lot of competitive advantage to have that technology as an exclusive license, right? Just a few things on Indian scenario vis-a-vis licensing. This is based on a research paper. I have included it in the reference material. I just thought it was very interesting. It is a 2020 paper that Indian startups rarely license in. I'm not surprised to see this from any external technology, because we all love to nurture and develop our own babies. Licensing out is definitely there, but it is still much lesser in the Indian context. It is not a motivation. For some reason, licensing or revenue generation is not a motivation for most Indian startups. Don't know the reason behind it. Maybe it's because it's a very long drawn process and many people are not aware. So I think kudos to the Venture Center team and Dr. Premna that they're doing this awareness talk today about finding licenses. I think that might help this particular motivation factor. Patent monetization is not something that Indian startups even look at throughout their business cycle. So It is more about developing the product. And then when I was working with Medtech devices companies to sell those to hospitals or the government, this is what we mostly observe, but not like actual patent monetization, which is very common in the West. Maybe again, due to low awareness and limited importance given here in the Indian VC setup to patents, although I think that is changing now. And there is very limited, like the idea of patent monetization and trading is quite limited in Indian context, right? But I think the great part is, as we all know, the India story of good patenting portfolios. Hoping that the licensing options is something that will keep developing. So on one side, we have companies who do a lot of licensing out, especially big companies like Glenmark and all. But hope to see it more happening in the startup world as well. I think depends on how you take a crack at this licensing, like how you view it. I mean, if you view it as a monetization and if you are a kind of team that wants to continuously innovate, then this is a very good option. Because then you don't need to get into the marketing and manufacturing and distribution, because setting all that up and becoming that kind of an enterprise is a totally different ballgame. So these are some couple of out licensing use cases that I could see in the Indian context. So the startup was facing challenges in manufacturing the devices. And so took the decision to do a license out the patent to a partner. And what the goal therefore was to develop it further. And then there was this agri startups from, technologies from ICAR. Give me a minute. So ICAR has this whole initiative where they invite applications from startups to license out their technologies, the R&D technologies, and they have talked about in this document about 40 successful tech transfers. And of course, the idea was, so this is an academic institute. I was told that in today's talk, there could be people from the academia looking to see how potential licensees. So you should look up this case of how ICAR has done it so successfully. And their goal was mainly how they can overall create value in the agri supply chain by doing this various kinds of licensing out activity. Yeah, others are just optional. So thank you so much. If there are any questions, happy to take.
Well, Vandana, thank you very much. We'll take some questions. Okay, first I have a few, but let me first go to those which, let's take up some which are on the chat box and then take it from there. Yeah. So first of all, are you okay? I mean, you're okay to ask to answer some questions? Want to drink some water and so on, please do.
Yeah, I'm not sure any question from you, Dr. Premnath, because you are way ahead. But I'll try my best.
Sure. So there is a question from Prasanna about, can you describe differences in methods of market survey for technology versus technology product? Any specific survey product or survey vendor can you suggest for technology market survey?
Sorry, I didn't catch who asked the question.
Prasanna from Sorting Swans. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Prasanna. So in terms of the differences, I already talked about. So the survey technique as such might not differ. So when we were doing a survey, it pretty much follows the same process. The only difference that one sees is that sometimes the data is not available from the different sources, because if it's a very novel technology or a semi-novel technology, then there's nothing like a patented technology cannot be semi-novel. But what I meant in terms of semi-novel is there are no parallels in the industry to even think about it. Maybe it is something outside of India. So from wherever you can get the data, the person, whoever the agency, wherever you do it, they will do a projection. So you just have to keep that in mind as you're going through the report. In terms of doing a market survey agencies, sorry, I mean, during COVID and now I'm not that much active in this field, but I'm sure Dr. Premnath or the Venture Center team can suggest some. There were a couple that I have worked with earlier, but I don't think they're existing anymore. So sorry,
Yeah.
not able to give you any names.
Yeah, I think we can have a longer discussion on this, Prasanna. I think you should just connect with the Venture Center team members and they can help you out with that. But of course, there are many tools available and it's not like a very easy single solution, single tool kind of a thing. People end up using multiple tools, multiple ways to get to doing surveys, especially if you don't want to spend a bomb and and also if the you don't want to rely on one source, right? So because you end up doing multiple sources. I think we'll leave it there. Let's look at another question. Pragna has a question. While creating databases of companies, was it created when the need arose or it was anyways created for a few sectors when you went about with lead identification?
Yeah. So the way we worked at it is, of course, we first, as I said, right, I mean, it was an advantage or a disadvantage. The jury is still out on that, but we already had technologies that we were given by the labs that we had to sort of look at commercialization. So our job that time was mainly to look at these technologies and then rank them in some way, because we are talking about how many labs the CSIR has currently, I don't know, but we're talking about at least about 10, 15 labs that we were actively working with. And let's say even 10 technologies from their various departments. That's a huge number. So we had to first sort of narrow down which were the technologies which were more suitable for commercialization and go ahead with that. And then, yes, once that portfolio was fixed for the next 6 months, we would be doing an ongoing technology sort of like looking at licenses for all across, not just one technology. So if we are, let's say, going to Merck, we would sort out like out of these 60, 50, 40 technologies we had, which are the ones that can match with Merck and talk about all of them. So it was an ongoing thing. So as a technology licensing and commercialization business, our approach was slightly different. But in case of an innovator or a founder, I'm sure that job is much easier. Only thing I want you to remember is it's an ongoing activity. You cannot just, it can't be done in a serial fashion. It has, everything has to go parallel as you are working on your form factor, your UX, your other things related to the product, I mean, the technology. I hope that answers.
Yeah. There's also another question about uh, from Mr. Bansal saying, even if we give up the attachment to the innovation, how can we convince the other person to use it to manufacture, like allowing them to use your design but not own it? I suppose this is the dilemma of every innovator, right? In terms of doing it yourself versus having somebody else do it. And the other person needs to be equally motivated or interested in doing it, or even having the same vision as the innovator on what is possible. So how do you handle such frictions, Swandana, when you came across some of those? Because I'm sure there must have been many of those.
Yeah, no, I think just the way we were set up, it was a little difficult, but just answering to the person who has asked this question, that is the reason I said you have to start early on. So it has to be a partnership between whoever you are trying to license out and yourself. So then that this whole thing about I'm handing over my baby and I don't know whether that person will take good care of it, that gets taken care to a larger extent. Plus, if you start early on, you have this option of sort of, almost like a matchmaking. You can vet out different partners. And if you feel that that person is not going to do justice to your technology, you can always go on to the next one. So I think the solution is early on. Start early on, as early as you think it's possible for you.
Yeah, and of course, there is a continuing question which I'm not able to understand entirely, but what if it is new due to some reasons? In the sense, let us say that somebody has come up with a technology and now they need to, find takers. So I think one of the issues which we often see is that, people have this idea that these, have an idea of what is possible, and the taker on the other side doesn't necessarily understand it, or doesn't share that vision, isn't it? So one of the key tasks of people who are finding licensees is to bridge that gap in sense of putting the story together and so on. Actually, that let me ask you my question on that, which is, how much of that work did you have to do? So for example, this is a common question we get from potential licensors is, we don't want a technology, we want a project. That means they want the opportunity business case also laid out. So did you have to lay out the business use case? What all did you do to prepare the business use case for a potential licensee, besides just offering the technology?
Yeah. So this is the same thing that we face, and actually the example that I shared, right, where the licensee was very interested, but he didn't have that business set up for that kind of in licensing. So of course, we looked at our team whether we had that skills to really help him out or at least advise him in that case. But we did help him build an entity which could then license him. So I think in a way that was almost like a project where we just didn't hand the person the technology and said, okay, fine, now the you and the lab can now work on it and see how it goes. The other thing I like to think is that your job is not done by just licensing out, right? You have to make sure that that licensee is able to take that technology and actually build it into a product and is able to put it out into the market, because the innovation will always remain your baby, right? You know the in and out of where it can be tweaked, how can it be changed without changing the core technology. So I think that job has to be there with you for the next 6 to 9 months. So in a way, I would say the entire licensing out is a project. It is not just a transaction of on paper where you receive the royalty and you give out the technology.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
There are, let me just take a few more questions if you don't mind, right? So, are there any tech transfer online platforms where potential industry licensees can be reached out? That also, is there any way, are there, a related question is, amongst the many things you tried to reach out and find the right licensee, what worked better? You gave a few pointers during your talk, but also, are there some simple tools? Also, is there, is there a certain way of searching to find them, right? Would you recommend attending certain conferences, trade shows, and so on? Would you suggest that there are other ways should you be using, for example, the inventors network? How do you go about finding the right places?
Yeah. No, I think definitely at least I'm not aware about any tech transfer platform which is India based, which has like a database or something like that. I mean, in CSR Tech, we did try to build that and we had a good solid database. I don't know what happened to that. It's already obsolete probably. So nothing is available as of what I know right now. In terms of the tools, again, I think the main thing is to have that mindset, right? Like, as I said, have a dedicated team member who is moving around in the industry, in the market in which you are interested in. So these are not just trade shows, exhibition, conferences, but even just walking over. I mean, I don't know what is your technology. Is it something which is available in the stores? But you just go and have a look just on the packaging. I mean, pharma, I know there is a manufactured by, and there is also distributed by. Who are those companies? You just can get the names from there itself. If it is a product which is aligned to your technology, that is a starting point. So there are various tools as to how you can build that L0 that I was talking about. We have built L0s from sector reports, like from big files, where they give a list of companies. I mean, these are all just starting points. Then, of course, you have to research into the company one by one. So that's why I said it is a tedious work. It is almost like you finding a match for somebody in your family, right? Like you need to go through those motions of doing it. And that's why again and again, I brought up this key takeaway about having the team or a team member who does this in a dedicated fashion. So when you're talking about the technology and the importance that you give to a product team, your researchers, your inventors, that one person who's market facing and market oriented has to be part of the team from day one, because then his job is to go every time you have made some critical milestone in your product design or something, and then go to the market and get some feelers as to are we walking in the right direction, or has
Sure.
suddenly the sector changed?
Yeah.
That is what
So, by the way, there are some questions from Shirish, but I think this may not be the appropriate forum.
Primna, just a moment.
Yeah.
Before we take the next question, just wanted to remind everyone, the feedback link is in the chat box. We know this was a fantastic session, but we do want your return feedback also, which will help us to incorporate your suggestions in the next talks. Yeah, over to you, Dr. Premnath.
Sure. So, Shirish, we can separately give you inputs. So, yes, professors from colleges and all can start companies. Now, the only thing is that your institute has to adopt certain government rules. I hope they have done it. So, that should be possible, but we can give you specific comments separately. That aside, I wanted to just pick couple of other questions and then close. There's a question from Bipin about, are there any indicative rates for licensing patterns? Does it work on revenue or profits? Do the rates vary from country to country? And just to probably follow that up also, yeah, let's discuss that first quickly.
So if I get the answer, if I get the question correctly, you are asking me the size of the licensing deals?
Yeah, so I think I realize it's a little out of the today's topic, but the question is about indicative rates of licensing patterns. Does it work on revenue or profits? I think the terms typically are connected to the sales, that is revenue, right?
Yeah.
And the percentages and all, of course, it varies considerably from field to field. But if you want to suggest anything, does it vary from country to country?
Yeah, of course, it will vary from field to field. It will vary from country to country. It will vary on how you are pitching it. Of course, all that is going to vary. I don't have a ballpark number, as I said, because currently I have not really looked or done any licensing deal.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the venture center staff can really look it up and tell you for your particular sector or whichever area you are working on, like what are the most recent deals that have happened, and then it is for you to see like what is that range in which the potential size, I mean licensing deal size would fit in. I mean, we did deals of even 10 lakhs and also like a half a crore or something like that in CSI Tech, because I'm talking about 7-8 years back.
Yeah, I think there are some databases available.
Yeah.
In the outside India, Indian data is not very good. You're right.
Yeah.
And some of them can be expensive, the data. Some you get a little more readily. But there are ways to do that. I think it is too specific to give a generic answer, unfortunately. Right?
Yeah.
There's another question of how does one protect future IP post licensing? The licensee will ask for technology which invariably throws up additional problems to be solved. In your discussions, do they ask for future IP, the licensee?
No, not really, because you have to fence off, right? Like, what is it that you are willing to license out? So as I gave one of the examples, I went through it very quickly, but you can look at it when the PPT is shared by the team, that you can do various things. You can look at your core technology. You can say, this is not my core, so non-core IP or non-core technology. You can take a part, and then you can accordingly build that licensing contract. There is, and your future IP need not be a part of it if you don't want to.
Yeah. There's one, I'll take just one final question before we let you go, Vandana. There's a question from Kavita on what are the criteria used to prioritize technologies. And there, I just wanted to add also, did you have you mentioned a few, but these are the top 3 items you would use to say, yes, this one has a good chance of, licensing. If you were to look at a technology summary or a brief, what would come to your mind as the top few things you look for when you're looking at opportunities to license? So are there any criteria? And one more point I wanted you to comment on is how helpful are the technology marketing documents and what do you need to prepare for that? What roughly should be there in the content in terms of technology marketing documents which you use when you're communicating with potential licensees?
Right. So going back to your first question, which was, sorry, Dr.
Kavita said that criteria to prioritize
Criteria.
technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'll answer it from my domain, life sciences. Of course, as I said, right, what was the most active sector? Like you saw in my Excel sheet, there were like 4 focus areas. So this was a culmination of what technologies we had, and then what were the sectors in which we saw that faster licensing could be done. So of course, knowledge about your sector, about your target market as a whole, not just your technology, but target market like pharma. Pharma is a good sector to have a lot of licensing activity, right? So that is one. Secondly, I think, of course, the available market size for that technology. Like I would any day go for a drug which had a bigger market share compared to, let's say, maybe a API, which was for a niche thing. So if I'm looking at these things, this is how I would prioritize. So from the business point of view, of course, in my case, and this might not apply to you, but we also looked at the team, like even the licensee team in terms of, because see, ultimately this is a negotiation. Just the ballpark of the technology is not going to be enough to convert it to a deal. So the teams on both sides, and we had a document which you had many motivations and drivers that we looked at to make sure that ultimately, if everything else works, both the teams have to be able to sit across. And so when I talk about licensing, it is not just about a paper thing. It has to convert, and the technology has to benefit the licensee, and also the licensor has to get. So the team, their mindsets, how they look at things, all this is important. So this we used to do like sort of a, I wouldn't call it an interview, but like, when you do an introductory meeting, we would make sure all those pointers were answered. So I to me,
Yeah,
that
so I think you were basically looking at also how committed the
Yeah.
technology development team was to ensuring that the technology succeeds, how much hand holding they are willing to do, the institution, how keen it is on tech transfer, or is it just one
Absolutely.
other tick mark in their box,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth, and building it into your process, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's very important.
yeah. Okay, I think that's the second one was about the tech marketing documents. The
Yeah.
tech marketing documents that you prepared, or what did you present to these people on behalf of the technology developer, and what are some pointers that you want to give?
So I think it pretty much looks very much like a marketing pitch that you would prepare for any product. So like, when we would start out, of course, start out with a description of your technology, what do you know about where does your technology fit into the market or the sector that you are trying to approach. So you have to think from a licensing's point of view as to what are the things that they would require. A good, like a good spread about the technology itself, but also more focus on the business part of it in terms of what are the future revenues that the licensee can expect based on the research that you have done. So all this has to be part of a technology marketing document. It's not just a plain technical document. It has to be a business document, because by doing that, you are making the licensee's job easier in terms of the questions that they come back with, the objections they come back with. And they also feel that you have done so much work to understand their company, their sector, their market. And these are just those soft points which create a good rapport for taking the whole thing forward. So I would say, even if you're calling it a technology marketing document, and you are going to be very well versed in terms of describing your technology and everything, please pay more attention to the marketing part, to the business part, the vision part, projecting certain numbers for the licensee in terms of how you see this happening for them. So I think it's a business document. That is how I would like to say. There are many templates available online if that is what you are asking. I mean, but the template also you pick up, make sure it's a good mix of your technology and the business case. It needs to be a complete document in that sense.
Yeah, in fact, very often the counterpart on the other side, on the industry side, you're essentially providing them enough masala to sell it inside their company, right?
Exactly.
So you're acting on their behalf in terms of
So
trying to,
yeah.
yeah.
As I said, like, you convert that person into your internal champion, and then that's it. Like, you have a big foot in the door. I mean, even then, that is a starting point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great. I think it's already 5:20. Sorry we kept you long, but thank you for taking up all these questions. And I'm happy that there were many questions in the chat box as well. So thank you, Vandana. And I'll give the floor now to Mugdha to do the closing. Yeah.
Hi. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarda. Thank you for the time, and we appreciate your inputs for this session. If there are any more questions beyond this session, we would reach out to you over email separately.
Sure.
So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Gentle reminder to all the attendees, please do fill up the feedback link from the chat box. And our upcoming talk in this series coming up on Tuesday, 8th of March at 4 p.m. is on Only Biodiversity Act. And the speaker for the session is going to be Dr. Vijay Paranspe. So please do join us on 28th March once again at 4 p.m. Thank you and bye.
Thank you.